friends, does it sound like Firmilian, the bishop who is writing, the bishop of Caesarea and Cappadocia, holds to Vatican I? Certainly doesn't. But is there any evidence that he says, oh, I know I'm going against the ancient faith of the church here, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to become a heretic and rebel? No. This man had no idea that Stephen is supposed to be the head of all Christians on earth, because that concept had not yet developed in the history of the church in any way, shape, or form. One last thing historically I'd like to point out to you. I'd like to refer you to Augustine's writings against the Donatists. I don't have time to go into it. I wanted to this evening. I was doing some studying this afternoon. Look at how Augustine answered the Donatists. Here is a position where you'd find Augustine and be able to really understand how one of the greatest thinkers in Christian history would understand the formation of the church. And if you read his writings against the Donatists, you'll find him over and over and over again as he attempts to fight against Cyprian's position, holding up Peter as what? The first infallible pope? No. Over and over and over again. Look up Peter in the back of the volume in Augustine's works, his writings against the Donatists. Look every single one of them up. Over half of them will be showing that Peter was wrong in Galatians chapter 2. He led the church astray, and since he was willing to be corrected by Paul, then those who followed Cyprian should be willing to be corrected too. Not of any appeal to the Bishop of Rome as the Vicar of Christ on earth to end all questions and all controversies. Very, very important stuff. Now let me just try to summarize. I do not believe that last evening it was shown to us that we must, by weight of evidence in the New Testament, believe in the doctrine of the papacy. And I believe without a shadow of a doubt this evening that we have demonstrated clearly from the early fathers that the position taken by modern Rome is an anachronism. It is not found in the early church. It is contradicted by fact after fact after fact. These are not just simply opinions of early church fathers, but we find them in the apostolic canons, in the Council of Nicaea, Canon 6, in the 28th canon of Council of Chalcedon. We find them in those types of sources, in doctrinal treatises, and in personal letters of the early fathers themselves. The entire spectrum of patristic interpretation shows us fact after fact that is contrary to the Roman position. And this is why many Roman Catholic scholars today embrace the concept of development so that they do not have to demonstrate that this was in fact the constant faith of the church all the way back to papacy. It wasn't developing at that time, that it develops over time, that the Roman bishop is not viewed by Christians as the head of the church. Now, the question that we have to then decide is, has Mr. Matitix demonstrated that the early church did function with a knowledge of the papacy? And I submit to you that every time Mr. Matitix has been faced with an irreconcilable fact, his reaction has been to say, well, the canons, Council of Chalcedon are not infallible. Cyprian wasn't infallible. Augustine wasn't infallible. Basil wasn't infallible. Hilary wasn't infallible. Chrysostom wasn't infallible. Gregory Nazianzus was not infallible. And we can go on and on and on. My friends, if we simply define everybody else out of existence that disagrees with us, we will be able to find unanimity. But we cannot do that if we want to be honest with the history of the church. He just said he doesn't like the 80% number. There's a Roman Catholic who did the survey. He says percentages change. Not in historical research, they don't. If you've got a fixed body of literature and you do a good job surveying it, those percentages aren't going to change. And how far are they going to change? The simple fact of the matter is the Roman Catholic position that is presented to you as being binding upon your conscience today is a novelty in the early church. It is an anachronism. This has been demonstrated clearly from the facts that have been presented to us tonight. And so I conclude that we found no evidence in the New Testament that the early Christians in the New Testament functioned with the concept of the papacy as defined by Vatican I. We have looked at the early church literature, and we have discovered the exact same thing. Therefore, I do not believe that the man coming to visit this city is what he claims to be in the sense of being the vicar of Christ, the successor of Peter on earth. The facts, the Bible, and history themselves do not support that contention. I thank you very much for being here. God bless.
Mr. Matitix, you have 12 minutes to conclude.
You are the diehards. Look at this. In closing, I want to make an apology, since I'm an apologist that seems somehow appropriate. I want to apologize, first of all, on behalf of all Catholics who have done a less than noble job, a less than successful job, sometimes even a less than honest job in explaining their faith and defending their faith. I am not here to defend Catholics. I'm not even here to defend myself. That is not the truth that I'm standing up for. What I am standing up for is the truth of the Catholic faith. And we have fallen far short of it many, many times. If any of you are former Catholics who left the church because of mistreatment, whether it was a sister rapping your knuckles or something more serious, I want to apologize to you on behalf of my fellow Catholics for perhaps the less than Christian way that you have been treated, or the less than Christian way you have been taught your faith, so that you were never given the biblical foundations of the Catholic faith and the foundations from early church history as well, the two sources of information we have looked at last night and tonight. I hope that whatever you think of the results of our interchanges last night and tonight, that you've at least heard some things if you are not a Catholic, or even if you are a Catholic but perhaps in doubt about the truth of your faith, you've at least heard me share some things that maybe your priest from the pulpit hasn't shared. Maybe the sisters in CCD haven't taught you. And I hope that you are willing to consider the possibility that here's this guy up here. He's not, as far as I can tell, making any money by flying all the way out here and doing this. He doesn't seem too stupid. He doesn't seem like a man who was born and bred in a prejudiced environment, because he was a Protestant who hated Catholicism and condemned it and castigated it as false Christianity, and he became a Catholic, obviously, after great mental resistance to this conclusion. I hope you are willing to think tonight, even if you are not persuaded by what I've said, that maybe, just maybe, there is some plausibility to the Catholic case. Maybe all Catholics aren't stupid, or becoming Catholic or remaining Catholic, only because of a sinful nature, as was put up as a possible hypothesis last night at the first debate. I hope you're willing to consider the possibility that with intelligence and with sincerity and with a genuine desire to be faithful to Christianity as it